No.
No.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's good to be back with you. And inshallah ta'ala, we'll continue the theme of Laylatul Qadr, where we foregrounded the Quran, or the month of Ramadan, as the Shahrul Quran. And for the Eid talk today, I will do the same, something similar. We shall foreground the Quran as a nexus for celebration. And I've called this particular talk, I've entitled it Al-Quran Al-Furqan Kitab, towards the Fitrah of Eid al Fitr, inshallah ta'ala. So the first thing I would like to mention is the fact that, just going back a bit, I explored the two surahs, Surah Al-Alaq in the one case, and Surah Al-Qadr in the other. That was for Laylatul Qadr, okay? So eminently, when it comes to the Quran, when you look at the Quran as Quran, then that is what comes to mind. Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq, khalaqal insan min alaq, Iqra wa rabbuka al-akram alladhi allama bil qalam, allama al-insana ma lam ya'lam. Okay, and here we have it, Allah Ta'ala commanding our beautiful Prophet, beloved Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, to read in the name of his Lord, of his Rabb. And this spawned an entire culture of Iqra within the Muslim world, across the ages, particular epochs, eras. And it's a culture that we would be foolish to ignore or to even lose. In fact, particularly in our contemporary times, it's something that we need to focus upon. But I shall not go into the details of this particular surah again. We shall just continue and see what sort of benefit can we derive from this. But it's quite amazing that the Prophet is, of course, still considered to be a madman by so many idiots, people who, incapable, whose hearts were just sealed to the beauty of this revelation. And to the point where Allah Ta'ala says in the Quran and gives his divine assurance to our beloved Prophet, where Allah Ta'ala says, Noon, wal qalami wa ma yasturun, ma anta bi ni'mati rabbika bi majnun. That's important to understand here. Allah Ta'ala says Noon, and that is one of the mystic letters in the Quran. And by the pen that writes, you are not, through the ni'mah of Allah Ta'ala, through the grace of Allah Ta'ala, a mad person. And on the contrary, it is, rather than madness, it is a magnificent revelation on the other hand. And it is this blindness that was so pathetic, that was so, if not sorrowful, in a sense, particularly during that particular time. And we know from this also that while we have the Quran down in writing, as it was revealed, secured, yet the Quran is not the complete word of Allah. The Quran is the perfect word of Allah. It is perfected for humanity. Why do I say this? For the simple reason that Allah says elsewhere, Qul لو كان البحر مدادا لكلمات ربي لنفد البحر قبل أن تنفد كلمات ربي ولو جئنا بمثله مددا. Extremely important to know this. Allah says, say, had the ocean been an inkwell for the words of Allah Ta'ala, for my Rabb, then the ocean would have been exhausted before my words can be exhausted. وَلَوْ جِئْنَا بِمِثْلِهِ مَدَدًا, even if we come with a like of that ocean. The words of Allah Ta'ala are ineffable, impenetrable in its entirety. It is both eternal and sempiternal. But we have been granted this final word, and it is with this final word in the Quran that we have to live, that we have to embrace, that we have to enact. And all of this merely acts as an encouragement for us to delve as deeply as possible into whatever form of knowledge there might exist on this planet. Everything that has been revealed to us, that we look at, that we see, we observe, every profession we can think of. And that is the reason why in the Sharia, we don't speak so much about secular knowledge and divine and sacred knowledge. We speak, as Imam Ghazali quite correctly observes, we speak about knowledge that is either fard ayn or fard kifaya. It's the best way of looking at the whole idea of knowledge. And as the Quran tries to represent that. Fard ayn is knowledge which is an individual obligation. Like we have to know how to perform salah, we have to know how to fast in Ramadan, Hajj and Zakat, whole lot of issues. These things are fard ayn upon us. And then we get other professions such as medicine, architecture, bricklaying, carpentry, any other profession. These are all fard kifaya. And there are communal obligations. And believe that if in a Muslim community, if there is no doctor, if there is no architect, if there is no plumber, if there is no carpenter, then the entire community is guilty. They're sinful in that sense. We have not fulfilled our fard kifaya. And that is important for us to understand, people. And that is how we look at deen, at ilm as such, in the framework of fard kifaya, fard ayn, sunnah, etc. And not with those two binaries of secular on the one side and sacred on the other. And that is very important, beautiful observation by Imam Ghazali on this particular point. Let us move on. That's the Quran as qira'ah, okay, as reading, as research. The next one is the Quran as Furqan. What does Furqan mean? Furqan means generally and lexically a separation, a distinction, discrimination of things, that sort of thing. When we add the alif lam in front, al-Furqan, as it is in the Quran, then we read it as proof or evidence. Okay? In other words, the Quran is the instrument, the criterion by which we come to distinguish between truth and falsehood on the one hand, and all the nuances in between, the gray areas, between right and wrong, and all the nuances and gray areas in between justice and injustice, and all the nuances in between, etc., etc. Okay? And so says Allah Ta'ala in the Quran, شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن هدى للناس وبينات من الهدى والفرقان. And that is what Allah Ta'ala says in Surah Al-Baqarah 2:185. Ramadan is the month in which the Quran was sent down or revealed as a guide, as a huda to humanity, and as clear signs, clear criteria for guidance, for huda, and for judgment. That is extremely important for us to understand. And also Allah Ta'ala says, وَلَقَدْ آتَيْنَا مُوسَى وَهَارُونَ الْفُرْقَانَ ضِيَاءً وَذِكْرًا لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. And we granted Musa and Harun the criterion for judgment, the criterion for our choices, and as a light and a message for those of taqwa, for the muttaqeen, for those intensely conscious of Allah Ta'ala. Also, Allah Ta'ala again says, تبارك الذي نزل الفرقان على عبده ليكون للعالمين نذيرا. And glorious and blessed is he who sent down the criterion to his servant, that it may be an admonition, an admonishment to all humanity, to all living beings. It is this that underscores our deen, undergirds our entire deen. It's based on knowledge which you consider both of the rational order, and I will speak about that later, and the supra-rational order, or the supernatural order. Okay? And this explains to us why when we either make da'wah or we speak to people about the deen, that we make clear the meanings, the intentions, the ultimate objectives of the Quran and of this beautiful deen of ours. And with that, we can quite confidently say that it is forbidden for us to, in fact, force people to believe, to coerce them into belief. And this is also in the Quran, where Allah Ta'ala says, لا إكراه في الدين. There is no compulsion in religion. قد تبين الرشد من الغي. And truth stands out clear from error. But the important thing is لا إكراه في الدين. There is no compulsion. And this happens quite a number of times in the Quran. I'll just quote one more ayah for you with respect to that. ولو شاء ربك لآمن من في الأرض كلهم جميعا أفأنت تكره الناس حتى يكونوا مؤمنين. Had Allah Ta'ala willed. In other words, this ayah is directly, is in fact addressing rather our Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam directly. وَلَوْ شَاءَ رَبُّكَ, your Lord, O Muhammad, then each and every human being on the face of the planet would have believed. أَفَأَنْتَ تُكْرِهُ النَّاسَ. Do you, O Muhammad, Muhammad's not mentioned in the Quran here, but it is him. Do you, Muhammad, want to coerce people until they are mu'mineen, until they are believers? No, you can't do that. That is not the way of the Fitra. That is not the way of the deen. It's not the way of the Fitra. And we shall explain that again in a short while. Our deen is based on knowledge and understanding. And very, very first articulation of that, in that Edenic state, almost pre-Edenic state, when Allah Ta'ala addressed the Malaika and addressed Sayyidina Hawa radiallahu ta'ala, and addressed Nabi Adam alayhi salam also, where the Quran tells us, and this is also in Surah Al-Baqarah, the Quran says, وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا ثُمَّ عَرَضَهُمْ عَلَى الْمَلَائِكَةِ فَقَالَ أَنْبِئُونِي بِأَسْمَاءِ هَؤُلَاءِ إِن كُنتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا. And Allah Ta'ala taught Nabi Adam the names of all things. Of all things, okay? كُلَّهَا ثُمَّ, and then displayed them and showed them to the Malaika, and said to the Malaika, أَنْبِئُونِي بِأَسْمَاءِ هَؤُلَاءِ. Tell me, explain to me what these signs are, what these names are, which I have just now taught Nabi Adam. In kuntum sadiqin, if you are truthful about this speculation earlier on in the surah, that Allah is going to create a humanity that will spill blood and create corruption on earth, etc., etc. And that is why there is this in kuntum sadiqin, if you are truthful in what you are saying. Okay? And what was the response? قالوا سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا. Glory to you, Allah Ta'ala, subhanaka. There is no knowledge except that which you have taught us. Innaka antal alimul hakim. Indeed, you are the learned one. You are the one of ultimate knowledge, and you are the one of ultimate wisdom. And this is what sets us as human beings apart from the Malaika. and in the opinion of so many people makes the human being more honored than the malaika in the eyes of Allah Ta'ala because of this. And it's borne out by a few lines later on. Okay, 3-4 lines later on. وَإِذْ قُلْنَا لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ اسْجُدُوا لِآدَمَ فَسَجَدُوا إِلَّا إِبْلِيسَ أَبَى وَاسْتَكْبَرَ وَكَانَ مِنَ الْكَافِرِينَ. And when we said after that to the malaika, because of this, and we said to the malaika, bow down, prostrate yourselves in front of Adam. They all prostrated except Iblis. Abba, he refused, was takbir, he was mutakabbir, he was arrogant, and he was of those whom we call unbelievers. He was an unbeliever. Now, the important thing here, too, people, when it comes to our quest for knowledge, when it comes to that search, do we have to be in the presence of Allah Ta'ala in order to be Muslim or a believer? The irony of all of this here, people, is quite simple and straightforward. That Iblis was in the company, in the divine assembly. He was in that company. He listened to the commands of Allah Ta'ala. He responded to the commands of Allah Ta'ala, but in a way that was filled with hubris, arrogant. And yet he was there, but he is a kafir. It does not guarantee people that if we are in that divine assembly that we will believe. And that's the beauty of our deen from this point of view. Belief depends on much more than just seeing something also. He was there and he is of the greatest of kafirin. And that was because he did not want to sujood. He did not want to sujood to the greatness that ilm had imparted to Nabi Adam. He did not want to sujood to that, to the greatness of knowledge that was important, that was imparted to Nabi Adam alayhi salam. And Allah Ta'ala so says elsewhere also, Tabarak alladhi nazla al-furqan ala abdihi. Blessed is he who sent down the criterion to his servant, that it may be an admonishment, as I said, to all humanity, and that is to all human beings. This point, people, is extremely important to understand, because coercion in this way is not the way of Fitra. Let us come to the third dimension, and that is Kitab, the Quran as the mother of all books. The Quran as the mother of all books. Of course, means mother, Kitab, book. So we call it, translated as the mother of books, the source of all knowledge, whether it's metaphysical, religious, scientific, juridical, moral, etc. All of these. And Allah Ta'ala says in the Quran, هُوَ الَّذِي أَنزَلَ عَلَيْكَ الْكِتَابَ مِنْهُ آيَاتٌ بَيِّنَاتٌ هُنَّ الْكِتَابِ وَأُخَرُ مُتَشَابِهَاتٌ. Says Allah Ta'ala, He it is who has sent down the book to you. In it are verses, basic or fundamental, of established meaning, clear meaning. They are the foundation of the book. In other words, the mother, the source of all of the book. And others are allegorical. Okay? And also Allah Ta'ala also says, يَمْحُ اللَّهُ مَا يَشَاءُ وَيُثْبِتُ وَعِنْدَهُ أُمُّ الْكِتَابِ. Allah Ta'ala says that He erases and affirms in the Quran that which He wills. And with Him is the mother of the book. That is the foundation, the womb of revelation. So says Allah Ta'ala elsewhere, Hamim wal kitabu mubin, inna ja'alnahu Qur'anan Arabiyyan la'allakum ta'qilun, wa innahu fi ummil kitabi ladayna la'aliyyun hakim. Surah Al-Zukhruf. Allah Ta'ala says, Hamim, by the book through which things became manifest. We have, by the book through which things became manifest, we have made it a Quran in Arabic so that you may be able to understand. Indeed, it is in the mother of the book, in our presence, the divine presence, elevated and full of wisdom. Okay, this is the way we need to understand how the divine construction of this particular of the Quran as such, as Quran, as a Furqan, as Kitab, and as Quran, as Furqan, and as Kitab. We need to understand and connect with the nature of that message. That message is, people, universal, and one that unremittingly urges us to return to our original state of Fitra. And there are various levels at which we may look at this, various aspects. I've chosen 3 or 4 aspects for our particular purposes. The first one is the intellectual side of things. And that is what I link to the culture of Iqra. We have to feed our minds, we have to feed our intellects. It is through the intellect that we become mukallaf in any case. Okay, what is the definition of a mukallaf? A mukallaf is someone who's both baligh and aqil, not just baligh. Bulugh means to reach the age of puberty. We all know that with our young men and our young ladies, puberty. But have they reached the age of discrimination? Are they able to make rational and sound decisions by utilizing the intellect? If not, they are not yet mukallaf. If yes, then they are mukallaf. That is the importance of the intellect in Islam. It is one of the kulliyat to set the 6 universal principles, the hifz al-aql, to protect the intellect. It is extremely important. And that is the first thing that was addressed in Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq, the intellect of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. 3, that was the very first address. It's the importance of it. Without a sound intellect, we would never be able to excavate ourselves and come to them until we come to that Fitra that is deeply embedded within ourselves. The second point is metaphysical and spiritual, of course. The human being I use an ancient Greek term, which is not anglicized, where the human is seen as a theomorphic being. Theos means spirit, morphos means material. The human being is a combination of both body and spirit, body and soul. Okay? And it is so in the Quran, both body and soul. وَنَفَخْتَ فِيهِ مِنْ رُوحِي. Okay? Now, in the condition of materiality, of that condition of morphos, of materiality, we are eminently social and collective. As a community or collectivity, we are united by the kalima, or ought to be united by the kalima, la ilaha illallah. And we declare that Allah Ta'ala is great also. And that is why we recite especially on the days of Eid, we bring the takbir and the tahleel to remind us of the essence of things. La ilaha illallah, that forms the core of our unity. It is through the kalima that we strive to attain the satisfaction and the nearness to Allah Ta'ala. In other words, we strive to ascend spiritually through the kalima, the wahdaniyah of Allah Ta'ala. Islam is a civilization of oneness, people. Okay? And of unity. Not conformity, as some people imagine unity to be. Conform to me and what I say, and do what I say, and they become authoritarian and despotic and tyrannical about things, and we see this all over the world in the Muslim world today. That is our people, I'm sorry to say. We speak about unicity and oneness in this beautiful diversity of ours, and I will get to that. The third aspect is the moral aspect, adab and akhlaq, where the Prophet said, إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ لِيُتِمَّ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ. I have been sent to perfect the conduct and the behavior and the manners of people. What we have to remember about morality, people, is that morality in Islam is not abstract. The moral and ethical principles are embodied in the Quran and the Sunnah. They are embodied there. They are living symbols within the Quran and the Sunnah. Islam prescribes a morality of what? Of action. A morality of action. Determined by what? By normative codes and by principles in the Sharia. And what is the scope of this adab? It's huge. It's towards Allah, number one. We have to have adab towards Allah in our conduct, whether we're in company or whether we are alone. We have to have, deal with that relationship in a way that is eminently moral. We have to have adab towards our parents, towards our family, towards society on the whole, and indeed even towards ourselves. La darar wa la dirar, for example. You can't hurt other people nor yourself. You've got your own body is sacred, and you are not the owner of all of this. So you treat your body as a makhluk of Allah Ta'ala, and that requires adab. Beyond that, towards the entire humanity, and even towards the entire created order of animals, of plants, of trees, of nature, everything. How many times isn't our attention brought to the beauties of creation in the Quran? I mean, so often. And we need to take note of these things, people. Then there's the societal aspect of things. Social. Respect for social values and rights of others, everyone. Not just Muslim. This is a universal deen, people. And we almost hell-bent at times at ghettoizing this deen of ours. Looking through this blurred, miserable little microscopes of ours. Those lenses that, fall on all the wrong places at times. It is terrible. It is bad. Muslims need to open up. We need to open up to the deen. In as much as Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam opened up to the wahy, to revelation, we need to open up and accept and embrace that, and not fight it, and not diminish it, as we so often do in our contemporary times. It is insane at times, how miserably, almost claustrophobic interpretations are and articulations of this deen are. It's worrisome at the end of the day. Seriously worrisome. Why going to this ghettoized, localized representation of the deen when it is beautiful, huge, open, universal, and led the world for almost 1,000 years? Islam was at the forefront. We have to acknowledge it. We have to look at that, look back into our histories, study them, see them, the Salahuddins and all those great people. And so it is that we know in our deen that the respect is for everyone. Society is viewed as a unity in diversity, people. Okay? And why do I say that we need to have respect for others? Because the hadith of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is quite clear about it. And there are so many of these particular hadith that exist. It happened on a particular day where one of the Sahaba of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam entered a gathering, a majlis in which the Prophet was and the other companions. And one of them said to another, he wanted him to shift himself. He needed space to sit and he wanted him to shift. And he addressed him in this way, his fellow companion. He addressed and he said, Ya Ibn Sauda, Ya Ibn Sauda, oh, you son of a black person. فَغَضِبَ النَّبِيُّ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وسلم. The Prophet heard that and he became enraged by it, by that reference. وقال, and he said, لَقَدْ طَفَّ الْكَيْلُ لَقَدْ طَفَّ الْكَيْلُ لَقَدْ طَفَّ الْكَيْلُ. The balance, the scales have been unhinged, unbalanced. The scales have been unbalanced. And that he said 3 times. لَقَدْ طَفَّ الْكَيْلُ. and says his immortal words after this. ليس لابن البيضاء على ابن السوداء فضل. There is no superiority of a child of a white person over a child of a black person. ولا فرق في بين دين ودين في تكريم الإنسان حيا أو ميتا. And there is no difference amongst all religions. He's here referring to all the previous religions like that. And he says there is no difference in all religions when it comes to honoring the human being, honoring them whether they are living or whether they are dead. SubhanAllah. This was the Prophet, and this was the message that illuminated that Jazir al-Arabiya at the time, the peninsula up there, Hijaz. This was the message that went to all the corners of the world. The beauty of this message. No racism, no this, no that. In fact, the first articulation of racism is in this, the earlier one, that earlier story, that Qissa of Iblis, where he said, when he was questioned about why he did not sujood, for example, he said to Allah Ta'ala, خَلَقْتَهُ مِنْ تِينٍ وَخَلَقْتَنِي مِنْ نَارٍ. You created him from mud, and you created me from fire. Different origin. I'm superior because I've been made out of and created out of fire. He's inferior. He has been, see the point? Made out of tin, out of clay. I'm superior. The first racist articulation ever in the history of the known world, I would say. So we have to be careful, people. It's satanic. Racism in Islam is satanic. It is just not bad manners and so on and so forth. It is shaitanic, because Iblis was the first to declare that and to ascribe superiority to. Amazing. So society is viewed as a unity in diversity, people, with taqwa being the criterion for individual excellence. Taqwa is the criterion for individual excellence, not anything else. Our background, our ethnicities, our race, our nationalities, etc., etc. No, it is taqwa, and taqwa is there for everyone, regardless of your color, regardless of your race, regardless of your ethnicity, regardless of anything else. Okay, with taqwa being the criterion for individual excellence. Where Allah says, "Inna ja'alnakum min dhakrin wa untha." We created you from male and female. وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ, and we made you into nations and tribes لِتَعَارَفُوا, so that you may come to know one another. إِنَّ أَكْرَمَكُمْ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ أَتْقَاكُمْ. The best of you is the one who is at the highest level of taqwa. So no matter what Qabila is a tribe, these things hardly exist. Okay, they do still. It's just diversity. But at the center of it all is taqwa. Okay, so in this particular way, when you look at the Quran, we try to look at the Quran as a mirror to nature, as a mirror to everything surrounding us, because it reflects all the time. We just need to open our hearts and our eyes to see what it reflects back at us. It is a mirror to nature. And if we look at the Quran, starting as it does with the long ayat, Surah Baqarah, moving slowly, systematically through to the end, it almost mimics a life in process. As children, things appear forever. Is it not so? Forever. The world is will never, disappear. I will never grow old and stuff like that. As youngsters, things are slow, okay? But as time progresses and the older we get, the more intense it seems to become. The more intensely conscious we become of Allah, the more intensely conscious we become of, the possibilities of death and illness and so on and so on. And so there's an urgency that accompanies old age as we go through, which is natural. That is the way the Quran has been ordered. Okay, it's been ordered along this lifeline of growth from a child right up until from the cradle to the grave. It is a reflection of that. It is a mirror of the life of any one individual. However, the Quran in itself is a diversity with all the different ayat and surahs in there. However, it is a diversity that, if read correctly, leads to unity. It is integrative. The Quran is integrative. On the other hand, when we look at the world or the dunya, it is also a diversity, but can lead to dispersion. Dispersion within ourselves, scattering our nafs, scattering ourselves, instead of being whole and integrated and focused on Allah Ta'ala and everything that is required of us in this beautiful journey of gaining greater and greater degrees of spirituality. No, we are dispersed here in this dunya, worried about this, fitna on that side, hatred on this side, internecine arguments all the time. We seem to live on all these idiotic arguments. It's disgraceful at times. We are getting dispersed here into this world. That's what's happening to us. And that's how I see the arguments, even though regardless of who is right and who is wrong. It is a question of the degree and the manner in which these arguments find the expression in our Muslim communities. It is disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. And as Muslims, we're not going to dwell on this. This is a day filled with positivity, with beauty, with love, and laughter and joy. But we have to note that sometimes our arguments and our internecine battles become destructive, people. And if we don't take note of that, we will soon collapse and scatter. So this world is one that disperses people. We all want a name in this world, don't we? Strive to have your name written on that sacred board in Jannah or elsewhere, in that divine becoming, posthumous becoming, where you can sit and enjoy in the light and love of Allah Ta'ala and all things sacred. Yet we mess around here on this little dunya of ours, all these dunyawi delusions and so on. SubhanAllah. That's all I can say. And I said at the beginning that, yes, this particular talk will focus on the Quran, as Furqan, and as Kitab, and that it is designed, the discussion is designed as one which leads us to the Fitrah of Eid al Fitr. There can be no doubt about the fact that the Quran as a whole is there to take us to our Fitrah. Okay. كل مولود يولد على الفطرة. Every mawlud, every human being, single human being has been created on the Fitrah. كل مولود يولد Fitrah, of course. And I shall look at that particular theme in conclusion to this. We need to celebrate the Quran today. What do we celebrate? We give our zakat al-fitr, or fitra as we call it, which is a symbol of the inner fitra, that potential fitra that lies within each and every human being. And so we share with everyone else. In celebrating that fitra, we share with everyone else, the needy, the poor, the destitute, the downtrodden, people who don't have. And so we give out that physical fitra to help those people, to feed them, so that they can enjoy this day with us. It's not only for the rich to enjoy, because fitra is not just the domain of rich people or wealthy people. Fitra belongs to everyone else. In fact, there's so many poor people who are more on the fitra than many of us rich people. Look, Islam doesn't deny us riches and to be rich and so on and so forth. No, as long as we perform our duties, of zakat and so on. But on this particular day, we have to engage everyone in that celebration, because it's a celebration of Fitrah, of a return to that particular Fitrah, the lessons that we need to learn out of all of these. So if you look at a hadith which I mentioned in another article of mine a while back, where the Prophet said, أَوَّلُهُ رَحْمَةٌ أَوْسَطُهُ مَغْفِرَةٌ وَآخِرُ إِتْقٌ مِنَ النَّارِ. The first of it is, the first 10 days is a rahmah, mercy. The second, middle 10 is a forgiveness. There can be no forgiveness without rahmah, without mercy, so the mercy has to proceed. And at the end, it is it's a manumission, freedom from the fire. But does that freedom, that manumission, merely indicate or point to those people in that Jahannam, and from there they will be freed and placed into Jannah? No. That Itkum Nar references us as human beings preeminently. That we have to liberate ourselves from that fire of hatred, of bigotry, of prejudice, of racism, etc., etc. That is what ought to happen to us through the beauty of the Ramadan and the purposes underlying Ramadan. It is so that we can be freed, emanumate ourselves from our lower selves and into our higher selves, so that we can connect with that Fitra. Ramadan, Ramad means to burn. That's the origin of the word. Ramadan means to burn, or a heated coal. So we burn the nafs throughout that, our sajn in Ramadan. Let me conclude with a piece that I wrote a while back on Fitra and on Fitna. I said that I wrote, though, that while Islam holds no prisoners, we may yet allow ourselves to be haunted by the demons of the past, which is an injustice in itself. Or far worse, try to hold others accountable for theirs. These may either be the demons of our own sins and errors, or those of others. Much more terrifying, however, is to unleash our inner demons of bigotry, hostility, and self-righteous anger upon the very order that Allah Ta'ala has created in a state of original innocence and designed to embrace purity, goodness, virtue, and wisdom. And so says Allah Ta'ala, so turn your being to religion and follow the natural disposition according to which Allah has created humanity. There is no altering the nature created by Allah. This is the right religion, but most people do not know. In Arabic, that's a beautiful surah, okay? A beautiful ayah. Where Allah Ta'ala says, فَأَقِمْ وَجْهَكَ لِلدِّينِ حَنِيفًا فَأَقِمْ وَجْهَكَ لِلدِّينِ حَنِيفًا فِطْرَةَ اللَّهِ الَّتِي فَطَرَ النَّاسَ عَلَيْهَا لَا تَبْدِيلَ لِخَلْقِ اللَّهِ ذَلِكَ الدِّينُ الْقَيِّمُ وَلَكِنْ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. That is the ayah. Okay. And so I go on to say that indeed the pristine and primordial nature of things cannot change, but they can be rejected. They can be rejected by us, as it is so evident in our day-to-day living. An understanding of this primordial condition of creation, including its manifested aspect of outer diversity, requires not only observation and reflection, but also the realization and absorption of its inner symbolic meanings. We need to understand that the outer and the inner, the dhahir and the batin, respectively, of Allah's inflected creational word, or rather of Allah's inflected creational word, act as complementarities that unremittingly urges us to seek both the beauty and majesty of His uniqueness. Through what? through the diversity of his divine creative act. And this is an act that is in a state of flux and change for as long as creation continues to exist. For Allah Ta'ala says, Qul, hal min shurakaikum man yabda'u al-khalq thumma yu'idu? Kulillah yabda'u al-khalq thumma yu'idu. Fa'anna tu'fakun. Allah Ta'ala says, say, are there any of the partners you associate with Allah Ta'ala who can originate creation and then reproduce it? Say, it is Allah who originates creation and then renews it. How then are you deluded from the truth? The thread that binds us people, and the thread that binds the splendor of diversity into the ultimate goal of the realization of unity and unicity is the unchanging, unalterable Fitra within which the created order is cast. That pure, spiritually nurturing womb within which everything resides and grows, the heart of the Kitab. And so it is that every child is born on his or her Fitra. Kullu mawludin, as I mentioned earlier on, yulad al Fitra. It is the discursive mind, people, that comprehends change. It is the heart, on the other hand, that connects with the sapient stability of the Fitra. These verses, amongst others, speak of an Allah that rejects the reductionism of myopic binaries, the reductionism of creation into a spiritually and socially corrosive we and they, or more emphatically, into a demonic division of a belligerent acknowledgement of and acquiescence to the ideas of ghayr and ghayriya. Ghayr means the other, ghayriya, otherness, as expressed by our beloved Shaykh Yusuf of Makassar in a brilliant work of his which I translated. Or we could choose the path of la ghayriya, a rejection of a divisive sense of otherness. Shaykh Yusuf of Makassar was extremely intent on this view. We are immersed into ghayr and ghayriya, and have failed to reach that point of la ghayriya. Ghayr and ghayriya, other and otherness. La ghayriya is a rejection of that. We are all one. We embrace each other as one, and not as the other, the foolish, lunatic other and that other. No, we might be lunatic or foolish, but when we embrace with love. We embrace not only your friend in physical form, but your friend, the Fitra of that friend also. So that is what he says, the path of la ghayriya is a rejection of a divisive sense of others, of Allah the Creator, who is neither of the East nor the West. And so, and through that state of la ghayriya, we have rejected ghayr and ghayriya, that we connect with the light. And what light do we connect with? Allah Ta'ala says, and many of us know this, in Surah An-Nur, Allahu nur as-samawati wal-ard, مثل نوره كمشكاة فيها مصباح المصباح في زجاجة الزجاجة كأنها كوكب دري يوقد من شجرة مباركة زيتونة لا شرقية ولا غربية يكاد زيتها يضيء ولو لم تمسسه نار نور على نور يهدي الله لنوره من يشاء ويضرب الله الأمثال للناس والله بكل شيء عليم. Subhanallah, what does that say? Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth. The similitude of Allah's light is like a niche within which is a lamp, the globe of glass, as it were, a shining star, lit from a blessed olive tree, neither of the east nor of the west. Its light near luminous, even though fire did not touch it. Light upon light, Allah guides to the light whomever He wills, And Allah gives people examples for this. And Allah knows all things. This light is the essence of Fitrah. This is the light through which we discover our Fitrah, through the Noor of Allah Ta'ala as Noor upon Noor. Do we wish to be a part of this in a state of Fitrah? Or alternatively, do we wish to mire ourselves in the veil of ghairiyah and sink into what? As Allah Ta'ala says, أو كظلمات في بحر لج يخشاه موج من فوقه من فوقه سحاب ظلمات بعضها فوق بعض إذا أخرج يده لم يكد يراها ومن لم يجعل الله له نور فما له من نور. That's the other part of Surah Al further on, a few ayat later. Allah Ta'ala says, oh, the darkness. Is that where you want to go? Into the darkness, in an ocean deep and vast, covered by waves, billowing upon waves, and above them clouds. Darkness, one on top of another. If one stretched out a hand, one would hardly see it. One would hardly see it. But whoever Allah gives no light shall have no light. The former verse, the one before this, which of the light, Nur wa Nur, that verse represents the essence and way of the Fitrah, eminently represented in the Divine Himself. The latter, the darkness one, in an ocean deep and vast, is that of fitna, a rebellion in all its forms, and particularly against the spiritual. And this is the role, people, that we ought to take, and that we ought to make a wish to take, to fervently long for that, and to call for that. And as I've said, even in that essay that I just mentioned, just in conclusion, we may colonize the moon, people, or we may colonize Mars, for example. But as long as we ignore the heart, we will remain enslaved to the lower self. Said the Prophet ﷺ, indeed, Allah has receptacles from amongst the people of the earth, and the receptacles of your Lord are the hearts of His righteous slaves. And the most beloved of them to Him, to Allah, are the most benign and gentlest ones. Narrated by Tabarani. He, Muhammad ﷺ, also warned, beware of extremism, al-ghulu, in our deen, ghulu, for it is extremism that has destroyed those before you. That's in Nisa'i, Musnad Ahmad ibn Muhammad, and in a number of other sources. The ways of darkness and spiritual myopia are many, people. The blameworthy attributes of that subaltern existence, as I call it, have been lucidly listed by Imam al-Ghazali, radiallahu ta'ala anhu, in his Ihya Ulumuddin. And amongst them, he counts the following, that acts as destructive forces, that act as obstacles and veils in our quest to get to the fitrah. The following: tahawwur, recklessness; jumud, indifference; jawr, tyranny; hamq, foolishness; badgh, conceit; istishata, quick to anger; takabbur, pride; ujub, vainglory; hirs, greed; waqaha, obscenity; tabdhir, extravagance; riya, ostentation; hasad, malicious envy; and shamata, malice. All of these things he mentions in his Ihya that stand as obstacles, as veils to that great illuminated fitrah. These are amongst the attributes that have found a defiant home in many contemporary extremists today. This hatred, this belligerence, hostility all the time. They just don't seem to tire. It behoves us to note, however, that extremism in Islam is not merely to be an obnoxious fanatic. It is to declare war against destiny itself. In the domain of the divine, there is just not one single predetermined destiny. There are multiple destinies. Destinies that may be altered through prayers. Said the Prophet ﷺ, nothing can deflect the course of destiny except prayers. We need to hold onto the rope of Raja, people, and we're not going to dwell on these negatives. We need to hold onto the hope of Raja, of hope, and in deference to the divine command, keep the bane of despair firmly interned in the trenches of bad faith. In the sacred scheme of things, however, we need to acknowledge the reality of choice. To either choose the path of liberation and enlightenment, the way of Fitra, or to choose the path imprisoned in an abyss of mindless bigotry, the way of fitna, the way of discord and self-destruction. In our acknowledgement of that reality, though, and along with an acknowledgement of the efforts of those who are striving to protect a heritage of a purposive and an all-embracing spiritual grace, we should also never forget the power of prayer. Pray to your Lord. Pray to Allah Ta'ala. Connect with Allah Ta'ala. So in the spirit of the light of the Quran, in the spirit of Eid as a celebration of this beautiful deen of ours and this beautiful book, the Quran, the Kitab, the Furqan, the Quran, we ask Allah Ta'ala to bring us closer to light, to bring us closer, just one step closer to that beautiful Fitra that will be our way into the Akhirah and be our way into the light of what awaits us in that Akhirah. So we ask Allah Ta'ala to take us out of the fitna of our nafs al-amara bis-su in particular, all those hateful, despicable qualities mentioned there by Imam al-Ghazali, and to take us into the beauty of love, mercy, compassion, respect and honor of other people. Take us, Ya Allah, into the light of Fitra. Place us into that state of Fitra. Kullu mawludin yurad al-Fitra. And as much as Allah Ta'ala, the hadith says, and many of you know the hadith, those of you who returned from Hajj, walam yarfat, walam yafsud, and you're not engaged in verbal or physical obscenities, raja'a kama kayomi waladatu ummuhu. They come home from the Hajj, from the pilgrimage, if they're not engaged in hostilities and rubbish and nonsense of that nature, and belligerence to other people, arrogance, then they will return as pure as the day on which their mothers gave birth to them. Let us enter into this Eid, whether it was yesterday or today or tomorrow. Let us enter into an Eid as if we have emerged from the womb of Ramadan and birthed into a new sense and a new condition, a new spiritual condition of Fitra. Wallahu ta'ala alam bis-sawab. And with this, I would just like to never forget this at the Azzawiya. I extend my Eid Mubarak greetings to all of you. From behalf of my family, Rhoda, my wife, my children, Shaykh Ahmed, his wife, his children, my brothers, my cousins, everyone else here. Too many of them. I can't mention all of them, but I know that they know that we will do that for them. And so on behalf of all of them, I extend you an Eid Saeed, Eid Mubarak, people. May Allah Ta'ala be with you. May the light be with you. May the Fitra be with you. Wallahu Ta'ala a'lam bis-sawab. Is it?